So I was asked to talk about vicarious trauma and what that means, and caregiver burnout and self-care to some degree, and come up with a catchy title. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm not okay. Because I find that we don't ask that question enough, that check-in. How am I doing? I know I don't. I even though as a social worker, and you'll see, and I preach and I teach about self-care, I'm not always the greatest at doing it. Even though I should, I'm not, because life, right? Life and stress, and sometimes it's just okay to breathe. So as we're making our way through this, and there we go. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview. And when I was thinking about, Kim let me know about a little bit about the organization and all the people that use and be part of this. And I think about, who is my audience? Who are you guys? And I think of, who am I? We always are giving to somebody else, trying to ease their life in some way. And it's such a noble thing and such a compassionate way of being that not everyone is like, and I think that's really important to know, that not everybody is as compassionate and giving and trying to give, and give, but we don't always give the same care and consideration to ourselves. Would that be an accurate statement?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can just nod. I won't see you because I can't see everyone, but I'm assuming there's going to be lots of nods. So during this webinar, I'm looking at discussing what burnout is, what vicarious trauma is, what it looks like in caregivers and children, and provide strategies for doable self-care. I'm not one to let's set all these big goals that aren't doable, because it's going to set you up to feel like a failure because you can't do it. And that's not helpful. It actually makes things worse. And some indicators of when to get more help. I'm also a big advocate of everybody needs somebody to talk to, and that we all should be talking to someone at some point. But there are times that we need to move to that next level. So a little bit about me. I am a social work professor at STU. I was a social work therapist and supervisor. I'm from Ontario originally, and I worked as a clinician with people with eating disorders, and in the management of a nonprofit organization. And then I came to academia to teach and be part of STU. And I love New Brunswick. I actually never came to New Brunswick before my interview, but I fell in love with it. And like everything, there's ups and downs, but for me, it's a good place to raise my kids, and I like the atmosphere. With that being said, I'm a single mom, and I have 2 children with special needs. Well, I haven't adopted, I haven't been in foster care, I haven't done any of those things, but I do have 2 kids with special needs. I have one young boy with anxiety and another one that has a seizure disorder. Like sometimes, I don't know if you find it, but sometimes life, when it rains, it pours. Everything kind of came to a head about 4 years ago with me. A lot of stress and leaving an unhealthy relationship, and I left, and within the week my youngest son started having seizures, and I was like, really? I kind of look up and I'm like, really, God, really? Is this what we're heading? And I don't know if you find that's the case, but sometimes you're just like, really? Something else at the table, something else is coming my way. Like, how much more can I take? And often I get tired and gives a lot. I give a lot, and I don't always listen to my own needs. So I want to be very transparent and clear that I'm not up here to preach about, I'm not anyone to preach. And that's not who I am, is that nobody is perfect. And I like to lead through example in that way, that, yes, I am a social work professor. Yes, I'm a doctor. Yes, I've, done this, that, and everything else. But I'm a human being first. And I'm a mom. I've experienced trauma. I have kids with trauma. experiences. And, sometimes it's hard. At Mother's Day, my son at the school, they created this, what do I like about my mom? And on it's like, what does your mom say a lot? And it's like, I'm tired. I'm like, well, no truer words have been said. My first instinct was like, well, I wish he would have said something else, but I'm like, no, that's a reality. I am tired. I'm tired a lot. And that's okay. So it's a little bit about me, and I'm hoping to hear a little bit about you throughout this whole process. So in that essence, I'd like to do kind of a little bit of a check-in about how you are today. And I found this image and I'm like, there's two people. Well, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be okay. And we're almost out of gas. So the people that are on the second that's actually checking in, we're almost out of gas, looking at the reality of what is it you're feeling, or the we'll be fine. And I've been on both of those, right? I've been at places where, okay, I'm like, I need a break. I need to take a step back and really recognizing when I'm on empty. And there are times when I'm like, okay, got to keep going, got to get going. Everything's going to be fine when it's not. How do you find yourself? Do you find yourself on either end of those spectrums, or do you find yourself more so in one or more in the balance? Just to get a sense of where people are, if anyone would like to participate.
We do have someone saying that it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough quality stuff with my daughter. Another person is saying that they're so stressed. They're just running out of steam. And another person is saying, generally, I just ignore the tank.
Yes, those are all really important comments and things that I can imagine that we all have felt at different times. And I hear a lot of, and we all do that as carers, as caregivers, as mothers, as parents, whoever you may be, that I hear that guilt, right? That guilt piece in there. Well, I should. Well, I'm it's not good enough. And that example with my son with that page where he's like, the first thing he says is, what's your mom say is, I'm tired. I felt guilt. That initial gut instinct was guilt. That feeling was guilt. Like, I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. And then I had to get myself in check, because you do the best you can. And that's important to recognize, that you do the best you can. There's no comparison. We can't compare ourselves to anyone else. We can, but we all live different lives. Even though we may have some similar circumstances, it all looks a little bit different. And that comes from our own trauma, our own stuff and the other things that we're teaching is that I should be doing more, right? We should be doing more. Well, who said that? Whose rule is that? Because those shoulds lead to guilt, make you feel worse, and do nothing. It does absolutely nothing to help you in the moment or at all. It makes you feel worse, and then it's just compounding those feelings of guilt. They happen. It is being able to pause and recognize what's happening. And that's the first step, is to go, okay, we all have it. My first instinct was guilt, but to go pause and go, you know what? I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can, and that's okay.
Oh my goodness, Jenny, that just makes me go right to the comments there. You're definitely going to have a lot of interaction tonight. One person says that they're almost out of gas, but another person says, I go with that I am on empty, but I'll always end with I'll be okay. And that's exactly what you just said. And someone else is saying they feel both, and that it's hard balancing all the demands of parenting and being a working parent. I need more hours in the day. And then someone else says, I often think I'll be fine. Someone else has it worse. That comparison, see? And the last person says, makes you spin your wheels more.
Absolutely. It is overwhelming. Sometimes you don't have time to check in. When I first started, and I do this, I will get ahead of myself and get to different slides that I have, because that's just what I do. But it's really important that when I first left the unhealthy relationship, it was overwhelming. It was just basically standing upright was the best that I could do. And someone had mentioned to me, and it was really good advice, and I still have it happening now, is that I have on my phone 4 times a day, an alarm goes off. And on that alarm, it says breathe. And that's one of those self-cares that's doable, is being able to take a full like tummy breath, like the full hold and let go. Breathe in for 2, breathe out for 4. Because when we're stressed, we breathe very shallowly. We breathe from our chest, and that's what I was doing. And I couldn't even. I was so tense and so stressed that I couldn't even get it from my stomach. I couldn't take that deep breath. But I had to train myself and get that reminder. Even though now I don't need it, and I can take those deep breaths, and I practice the deep breathing, I haven't deleted those reminders, because I think they're still really good reminders to go, okay, I need to just pause and breathe 3 times. And that's self-care. Because when we're shallow breathing, we're all the hormones and chemicals in our body are not working in an effective way. Like, we're building, the stress hormones are flooding, right? Whereas when we take a deep breath, we're allowing some of those calming energies to take over, even if it's for 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds add up over time. Right? That's why I'm not one to go, okay, let's set this big, huge self-care plan. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. And we'll get there where we're talking about this kind of black and white thinking, either or type of thinking. And this is where I find these comments. It's okay to say we will be fine. That's those statements is what helped me get through my hard times. We will get through this. This too shall pass. This is something that my mother used to tell me, and would pop up regularly. It's like, this too shall pass. It's true. This is one moment in time, but it's one hard moment in time. And giving yourself credit for being human, and reminding yourself that you are human. Is there any other comments before I move to the next slide?
Stephanie just wanted you to know that you're making great points.
Thank you. So I add reflective questions, and if it's something that you'd want to share, you're more than welcome to. If it's something you want to think about on your own or think about later, that's fine as well. It's reminding who were you when you decided or became a carer, in whichever way that may have happened, and how the stories you've heard and the suffering you've witnessed affected you. We all have trauma in one way or another. And at times, the people that come into our lives carry trauma as well. And I'm just wondering, reflecting on those questions, and there's purpose to you reflecting on those questions, because we're going to talk about that and let it go through each of the next few slides. So I don't think we always choose, right? We don't choose trauma. No one chooses trauma. No one chooses a life that's challenging. No one wants that for another human being. I know when I decided to become a parent that I didn't want my kids to have trauma. I didn't want my kids to have anxiety and hardship or anything, but they did. And they do. And there were times where I felt guilty, and if I let myself go down those thought patterns, it could really pop up for me. And being able to kind of go, well, this is where I'm at. How is this useful for me? So I'll let you guys reflect on that.
I do have someone.
Yep.
One person says, I'm a nurse educator and I was bored, so we started fostering and then adopted. Then hubby became sick with dementia. I thought I had it all under control because I was a nurse, but I don't, and I'm still learning.
Yes. I think that's a wonderful way of putting it, and highlighting another really important piece. People that go into the helping profession, whatever it may be, being a carer is a helping profession, being a nurse is helping profession, social worker, whatever the case may be. We want to help, and but we think we should know better. We should be able to handle this. It's where those shoulds come in again. And it really, shoulds, woulds, ought to, they're all bad words. And they lead us to feeling inadequate, that we've done something wrong. And being able to really appreciate you sharing and being able to recognize that, you know what, I need to learn more about this. I need to check in on that. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, we have another person saying that they were an advocate for the underdog. And another participant is saying, I've had quite a history of trauma from abusive situations without any support system. I got myself out, and I want others not to go through the same. And then we have a last comment here saying, I became a parent very young, basically was still a child myself. So sometimes it's hard when I think about the parenting my oldest got versus the parenting my youngest has. I've done so much healing from the time I was 16 to now being 30. Parenting is such a unique journey, and it has many ups and downs.
Oh, of course, it is challenging. It's just overwhelming, and I think it's really important. And if you could take a moment right now to give each of you credit. I have no doubt that everyone that is here is an amazing human being that has been through their share and then some and more so, and things that no one should ever go through or experience, but are still standing. The fact that you are still standing is amazing, right? And being cautious of the voice that comes in is, even when you say that, yeah, but, however, that's not helpful thinking, right? And even taking that, excuse, my cats are going nuts. Even the being able to separate, we call it in social work externalizing, which is a bigger term, but it's really taking that unhealthy talk and putting it outside of yourself, because who you are and who each one of us is, as a true human being, is that we were born as I had a boss one time say, we were all born as wild childs, right? We were born loving ourselves. If you've ever been around a baby, they love themselves. When they want something, they will let you know. They have boundaries, they have all those pieces, and then life happens, right? And then that life happens, we get some of that really negative talk that is not our own. Because our instinct when we are born is to love ourselves and to survive. So somewhere along the way, we've got away from that. So when we're trying to reflect on and we hear that negative self-talk, being able to tell yourself, that's not mine. That's not mine. I'm going to set it over there. What is it that I need? And really checking in with what I need.
Stephanie calls it stinking
Thinking. That's great. Yes, I've heard it as that term as well. And we all have it. So I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, is looking at the continuum, right? It's not that you're either burned out or you're not burned out. It doesn't exist on continuums, like either or. It is a continuum. It's not that I'm experiencing vicarious trauma or not. It's not that I'm coping or I'm not. It's not that I need help or I don't need help. All these things require a continuum and require some form of intervention, whether it's self-talk, self-check-in, having a support group, whatever the case may be, getting a therapist, whatever the case may be. It's leading into this black and white thinking, leads to being in your head a lot and making you feel overwhelmed. It leads to that perfectionistic type thinking, that I have to be this way or I'm not this way. I'm either burnt out or I'm not. And it also prevents us from really checking in. And at the beginning, someone had made the mention, other people have it worse. That's ignoring the continuum, right? It's not black or white. It is somewhere on the continuum, and it's individual to yourself. I could say that someone could go through this, and that's there under the continuum, but I couldn't say that because it's really individual. It's really about your own experiences. It's a combination of your own history, the history or the things going on in the family. The fact that we're all living in COVID, that just threw a whole level of crap on everybody. And it really is individual, and looking at it as, I encourage you to look at it as a continuum rather than black and white. So when you ever get to that black and white going, well, I'm not, it's a yes or a no or black and white, it does not exist. Does not exist that way. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a definition of what burnout is. So you recognize burnout by the way you feel inside. Tired, discouraged, flat, hopelessness, maybe numb. It may look different for each one of you. Your sleep may be disturbed by anxiety dreams. Sometimes it can feel a lot like depression, but it may only be related to specific areas of your life. Maybe things that are going home is really stressful. So when you're out, you feel dreaded to go back home, or maybe it's at work and you feel dreaded and you don't want to go to work. Those are indications that things are going to, the thing that you're burning on that continuum of burning out. Like you're feeling exhausted, and emotionally, physically, you're just exhausted. And when emotional exhaustion is very different than physical exhaustion, in a way, it is way harder and it's way worse, emotional exhaustion, because it's you zone out. I know for myself, when burnout, I get more irritable quickly. I have less patience. Those are indicators for me that I need to check in, because I'm normally a fairly patient person. So when I start like snapping, or I know I'm like, okay, something's going on. I need a break here. And it's especially like to occur when you're putting out more than you're getting back, which I don't know about you. I'm on every single day, I'm putting out more than I'm getting back, right? As a single mom, you're constantly putting more out than you're getting back. So with that being said, knowing that every one of us is on some level of that continuum of burnout. I think that, would you say that's a realistic statement?
Absolutely.
So then what is vicarious trauma? Because it's different than burnout. Vicarious trauma is a process of change that happens because you do care about about the people you serve or you take care of. So I really want to process it. I'm going to say that again. It's a process of change. So something that happens within you because you care. Because you can't do what you do without caring, without having an emotional connection, without having empathy, without caring about the people. You just can't. And to be effective, you need to be able to do that. Even in professions like nursing and with and social work and professions like that, in order to be effective, you have to open up your own emotions. You have to care about what people are experiencing and feel to some degree what they're experiencing. Sometimes it's thrown on us, but we can be traumatized by what we hear. Again, it's hard because when we're working with children, especially, we're like, they didn't have a choice in this, right? None of us had a choice in this, but they really had no choice about it. So I can take what they're telling me. I can take what they're saying, what they're experiencing. I can take it. Well, that might be true, but you taking it has an impact. Over time, this can lead to changes to your psychological, physical, and spiritual life that also affect your family and work on all aspects of yourself. So it contributes to burnout, and compassion fatigue is another term for burnout. There's multiple terms out there, but same thing. Vicarious trauma contributes to it. but it's a little bit different. It happens because we care. And by hearing people's stories or experiencing the behavioral, emotional outbursts, the things that happen in your home when you're caring for children that experience trauma, that can be traumatic for everybody involved. And it's not that you've done something wrong because you feel that or other people in your family feel that. It's the reality of it, is that we impact one another. And when things happen or you hear some of the atrocities that people go through, it's hard. I have a nephew that has autism, and he's being bullied. He's in grade 8 and he's being bullied relentlessly. And for him, when he gets bullied, he goes to this place what he wants to kill himself. He wants to die. And it's heartbreaking. And in those moments, even though I could take a step back and go, I understand where they're coming from. You know, something's bigger with these other kids, because kids don't bully, they comes from somewhere. In that moment, I'm just like, this makes me want to harm children. I shouldn't say that because I'm being recorded, obviously not, but your instinct is like, this is just so horrible. How can someone do this? And it hurts. And because I care about my nephew, it hurts. And hearing the fact that some bullying is terrible, but then bullying a child with special needs on top of it, it's like, it just adds that extra layer. It makes me angry. And why is that anger there? Where does it come from? Because the vicarious trauma or the trauma that someone has experienced changes me. It changes you. It impacts you. It influences you because of what you're hearing, because of what you're experiencing, because of what you're seeing. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we have a comment that says it makes me angry too.
Yeah. But here's the cool thing. Anger is one of those things where people are like, you can't feel angry. Emotions are so very important. Emotions are the window into what we need, right? They are the key to what we need. And we live in a society that tells us, don't feel angry, don't feel this, don't feel that. You shouldn't feel this, you shouldn't feel that. When in reality, if we don't feel, we have no idea what's going on inside and what we need. Our emotions are telling you what you need. And I think about anger is an interesting one. I have my 2 children. They're very different personalities. My oldest one he feels angry, and anger controls the tears, right? So underneath that anger is a lot of sadness and a lot of anxiety. So the anger controls the tears. Where my youngest is more kind of withdrawn and taken back. And when he's dealing with things and dealing with stress, he's more to kind of be on the sadder side or more outspoken. He doesn't come up with that anger. So depending on personality, depending on different factors, people respond in different ways. But I encourage each one to feel. Everybody needs feeling is really important. Feeling angry is really important. Staying there and being stuck in those emotions, whole nother talk for perhaps another time. So some risk factors. So who are at more risk for vicarious trauma? This isn't a catch-all. This isn't a prescription checklist. These are just some things that are in the literature or things that are out there. So people in the early stages of caring and people in the later stages of caring. So people that are just started in foster care or in caring for with adoption or in the helping profession, because they may not, this is something new and wanting to look a certain way and having all these expectations are on there. And then people at the later stages that are been doing this for a long time, and it's wearing them down. Or where there's another, you've done it so often, and then someone else comes into your life and that's showing you something you've never experienced before. And you're like, I thought I had this all together. I knew how to do this, but now I don't. If there's a greater similarity to the child or youth or someone in your care to your own trauma, right? So if you're hearing something that's similar to something that you've experienced, that's going to up it, right? That's what we call triggers, right? Those are the triggers that are, it's going to elevate that risk for vicarious trauma and for burnout. The volume and severity of trauma responses. So how big the emotions you're experiencing, and whether you're experiencing, your children are experiencing, the people you're caring for experiencing, and the behaviors. If they're bigger, like bigger outbursts, bigger whatever the experience is, not sleeping well, that's a huge thing. If their kids are not sleeping well and you're not sleeping well, that's going to increase it. Like sleep is such a huge thing, right? If you're not sleeping, I don't know, how many of you are like that? I know I am. If I don't sleep, or if I have a disrupted sleep because of my kids, not to blame them, because it is what it is, but I'm exhausted and my tolerance level is low, is pretty darn low. That's going to increase your risk, right, of vicarious trauma. Personal temperament, like I said, I have one child that's much more outwardly aggressive. That's his temperament, where I have another one that's more reserved. So there's different factors in there. One's not better than the other. They're just different and they look different. Higher levels of life stress. So if you have other stresses going on in your life, that's going to up your risk for burnout and experiencing vicarious trauma. Not yet fully developed personal coping repertoire or support system. So this is especially important for children and other children that are in your home, because they do not have fully developed personal coping repertoire support system. Some of us may not have fully developed personal coping repertoire, and that's okay. It's not about going, well, this is where you should be. You are where you are, and what can we do now? What can we add to your toolbox? Non-supportive organizational context. So I put that in there. If you're looking at the systems that you're involved with, or if you're working in an organization that's not very supportive of your needs and that's going to create more stress. More stress equals more risk for burnout and to experience vicarious trauma. Believing self-care is less important than the care we provide. So giving is more important than self-care. And I'm going to just use my mind here and imagine that everybody is raising their hands on that statement, that believe that, you know what, they need me more, right? They need me more. What they need is for you to be okay. And that's very distinctively different. They need you to be okay. A recognition that trauma is linked to larger social political power imbalances, which are not easily remedied. So I wouldn't be a social worker if I didn't put this on there. And believing that we live in a society that there's a lot of trauma, that there's a lot of oppression that occurs, there's a lot of harm that happens based on these systems that exist, right? So women in general, and I'm going to be typical on that, are told to be the carers. Well, what happens of people of different genders? What is the recognition there? What does that look like? What's okay to feel and what's okay for this person and that person? It's all socially taught. We don't have to go down that road, because I will get on a soapbox, and we don't need to get on a soapbox because it's not really helpful at this point.
We have
Yeah.
someone who is saying it's hard to shut the brain off in order to sleep. And we have another comment where they're saying, I'm not the same person, sleep deprived, which happens a few times a week.
Oh, 100%. How could you be? Not only are you exhausted, physiologically, if you're lacking sleep, you have more cortisol in your body, which is the stress hormone, which is pumping through your system. So you're in a heightened stress state physiologically. So there's something physiologically happening as well as just being exhausted and emotionally and all those pieces. Sorry, what was the first one?
It's hard to shut the brain off in order to sleep.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not about turning it off, right? It's putting it aside. Sometimes when I teach sometimes about cognitive behavioral therapy, and I talk about this, and I talk about, if we were to close our eyes and imagine, we can do this, it's a very quick exercise. I want you to imagine, you don't have to close your eyes, but imagine a white bear. And I really want you to focus on that white bear, what that white bear might look like. Is it a polar bear? Is it a little bear? Is it a big bear? Is it fuzzy? Is it frozen and really cold? What does that bear look like? So I want you to get that image. So I'm going to assume that you have that image. Now I don't want you to not think about that white bear at all. I don't want it to pop in your head. I don't want any thoughts about it. I don't want you to think about it at all. I'll ask the question, you don't have to answer. How many had a thought of the white bear and it popped back in your head? Yeah. Eventually it will. Some people, when I do this in a class, students are really trying to try to win it and tell me like, no, I don't see it. You're popping in the head. So when you're laying down to go to bed and just like, don't think about that, don't think about that, don't think about that. Well, guess what? You're going to think about that. It's not helpful, but to put it aside, sometimes writing a note, having a piece of paper by your bed, so you can write like just notes. You can journal, but that takes time, that takes energy. But one word where you can set it aside so you can get it out of your head, put it down, can be helpful. So you're acknowledging, you can either even just say it to yourself. I acknowledge that is what's going on. I acknowledge to yourself those thoughts, and just kind of like a tide, the waves going in and out. Let it just come in and out instead of fighting it, because the fighting it is just going to make it come over and over. If that makes sense.
Yeah, good analogy.
Okay. So these are some symptoms of what vicarious trauma and burnout can look like. Insomnia, there we go. Body physiologically, like fatigue, exhaustion. And obviously this is not all the time, because I'm exhausted, I'm tired all the time. Numbness, body disconnection, appetite changes, maybe weight changes, not feeling very well, so feeling achy, feeling like headachy, feeling just unwell. Hypervigilance is a big one, being constantly on guard, right? That's that trauma, that startle response, which is a normal response in the body, right? We need to remember that your body's responding the way it needs to. It's just on high alert. It's like the fire alarm going off, the smoke alarm going off when you burnt toast, right? There's not actually a fire, but the alarm's going off because it smells smoke. That's that hypervigilance, right? Your body's working the way it needs to. That fire alarm, that smoke alarm is working the way it needs to. It's just not, it's picking up on everything coming in its way, as opposed to being able to kind of say, well, that's something I need to be worried about. This is something I don't need to be. Emotional feeling may feel shocked or horrified, persistent, unwanted emotional overwhelm, feeling sadness, anxiety, irritability, feeling numb, not feeling anything, feeling very flat, detached. And it all can happen at different times. And some people may experience some people may not experience others. That's okay. Absence of positive emotions, not feeling happy, not feeling humor, not feeling enjoyment. Those are all things that burnout and vicarious trauma can look like. Thoughts or beliefs, repeatedly thinking about those things over and over again, obsessive thoughts or images, or if someone tells you something. I know when I was a clinician and there are times that people told me things that I just like, I couldn't get out of my head. It took a lot of work to get out of my head because I just like, it was just so terrible. And I imagine some of the things that you've heard very similar. It's just like, oh my God, like you can't. And I'm a very visual person. So if someone describes something, I see it. Whether I'm there or not, I can see the whole thing. And then that's another layer of trying to get that out of your brain. Being distracted or forgetful, rigid black or white thinking. I should, I could, it's either this or that. When the more you start thinking like that, that is also an indication that burnout is happening, because you're not being very flexible and you're not being very kind to yourself. Loss of ideals, feeling depressed, despair, and pessimism. People, as you know, through the people that perhaps your own experiences and the experiences that through the people that you care for, there's a lot of bad people there that do bad things, right? And that is, I don't know how else to put it, but it's a mind fuck, right? I apologize for my language, but it really is hard. It's like, it does, when you're not a person that thinks that way, it's like, how can people do that? And being able to recognize, and that's something that I've had to come in my own mind and through my own experiences, that I can't understand that other person because I don't think that way. I can't comprehend. I can't use my way of thinking about things because that person doesn't think that way. So I can't rationalize why another person does another thing because I just not capable of thinking in that way. And it's hard when you may start thinking that the world is a bad place, people are bad, people can't be trusted, you can't trust anyone. When you start having those type of thoughts, like everything is bad, nothing's going to be good, those all black or white thinking, but it has this negative like lens to it, that is also an indicator that burnout is coming. Behaviorally, you might start to isolate. You might try to avoid what's painful, avoid what's uncomfortable. Being inflexible or over flexible about boundaries. It's a good one, right? About boundaries and what is okay and what is not okay. Conflicts with others where anger might be displaced, where you ever experience where you feel all of a sudden you like blow up at somebody or you have an outburst with somebody, but it doesn't really match the situation. And I encourage you to think about that in the way that it's not, those emotions always make sense. And I think that's something that's really important to remember. When you have emotions or when there are emotions presented, they always make sense. They may not, it makes sense in the moment, in the situation that you're at, but they always make sense. And that's why we need to become investigators and detectives in our own lives is, well, where is that emotion coming from? Was it because it's telling you something, right? If you're angry, you have a need. If you're sad, you have a need. If you're anxious, you have a need, right? It's telling you what your body needs, what you need as a person. Is there any comments before?
No, not yet, but sorry, I sound like Darth Vader.
It's so good. So is vicarious trauma affects all bad? So how the experiences of hearing what people and caring, how have they strengthened you? Because we always look at, well, this is bad. These are all bad things that we experience, but through what we've experienced and through recognizing you as a person and through caring for another person, you have developed your strength. I try to avoid saying, there's a reason for everything we go through and what happened to us makes us stronger. Well, that's crap. what you experience something and what you've done to get through it. That's what's strong. Well, that is what strength. You are strength. You have capacity. You've done this. And sometimes we forget to give praise to ourselves. And what is it? What meaning do you derive from helping others that hurt so much? What lessons have you learned about survival, resilience, and positive transformation? I know I've listened to people tell their stories and things they've experienced, and I'm like, I don't know how you're standing. I don't know. Like I the fact that you're standing talking to me, they couldn't recognize that. They thought they were a worthless person. They had known nothing, whatever. But I'm sitting there going, they are bloody amazing, resounding.
It reminds me of how we feel as coordinators about our participants when we learn about their journey and the challenges in their journey, the challenges the children are facing. We see them as such strong, compassionate individuals who have more or less just added to their resume, not in a professional sense, but if you were to write out, like, who you were before your placement compared to who you were after your placement and what you've done and how you've survived that and helped a child and yourself, it's just, we're amazed by our families. I wish they were as amazed as we are.
I know.
We do have a comment that says, what does one do if they feel they can't persevere through the situation?
That's a very big question, and I need a little bit more information to be able to answer that appropriately.
Okay, so maybe if you want to expand on that, Carrie, then we can come back to that after the next slide. Do you want to do that, Jenny?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
So again, the struggle to find meaning is the despair versus the optimism, right? We have increased despair and helplessness, like I don't matter, I don't make a difference, I'm alone, I'm the only one, I give up. That's feeling very, very overwhelmed. And I would say burnout is you're burning out, right? You are burnt out, that there's something bigger that needs to happen here. Where we're shifting to optimism, where we're looking, I am important, I make a difference, I have support, and I can do this. So again, we're looking at this spectrum, right? We can't go, if we feel like I'm alone, I'm the only one, we can't just go to the flip side and be able to start telling ourselves, I have support, I feel great, I feel this. That's not reality. So there's somewhere in the middle. How do we shift that, right? I feel alone right now, but there are things that I can do to get help, to get support. It's more of a realistic step to avoid that black and white thinking, going, you're not going to, if you feel that you are alone, you're not going to feel like you have support. And just saying that is going to be meaningless. It's going to mean nothing. But if we put the statement of, I feel alone right now, but there are things that I can do, or I can reach out to find out how I can have more support in my life. That's a step towards feeling like you have more support. So nothing exists in absolute terms. I am alone. It doesn't exist in absolute terms. It's about breaking it up into steps.
And actually, Carrie expanded on her question about what does one do if they feel they can't persevere through the situation. And then she expanded it by saying, if the situation seems like the trauma isn't going to end in the situation. But then she says this slide actually kind of answered her question.
Wonderful. And this is the thing. I know I for my own journey in my own life, that I needed to come to this growth, and it's something that I've helped others to do, and many times, is that it's hard to hear, but trauma doesn't go away, right? It's a part of your life, but it doesn't have to be the driver in your life. It doesn't have to be the person. It doesn't have to be the person in control of your life, the thing that's in control of your life. At different times, again, I'm going to use the analogy of a wave. Sometimes we feel like we're just in a wave, and sometimes we feel like we're underwater and we're taking on water and it's overwhelming, right? But like an ocean, it will calm down. You know, time doesn't heal all. It's what we do in that time, right? And part of it is, what are the small steps? It's not thinking about it and all or nothing. If we feel like, when is the trauma going to end? It's not, right? It's a part of your experience, it's a part of the thing, unfortunately, that you've had to experience. But it doesn't define who you are by any means. Your strength, your resilience, the essence of who you are, the things you like, those are what determine who you are. But sometimes it's just like the waves are coming over and that's all you can see is the trauma. And I can appreciate how difficult and challenging that is. But knowing that it is a wave and there are steps that you can do and things that you can move in small little steps in order to regain who you are, because none of us are trauma. The kids that come into that we're working with, they're not just trauma. There are so many different aspects of them. Trauma is just something that they experience that's impacting them in many different aspects, but it's being able to get under that. Remember the analogy when I began at the beginning about, you know, we are born as a baby that's wants to take care of ourselves. Like we love ourselves. That's who we are. Anything that's saying anything different is not ours. It is not ours to carry. And how do we take away and push away some of those negative thoughts, right? How do we put that to the side and then focus on our needs? You know, and that's part of the purpose of what the talk here is. How do we focus on ourselves and learn to listen to ourselves and being able to distinguish our voice from the voice of trauma, from the voice of people that have been in our lives that have taught us in many different ways, done things that are just not helpful or kind, is being able to recognize that voice. That is self-care, is being able to recognize what you need. And emotions are the key. If you're feeling sad, you want to feel comfort, right? If you're feeling anxious, you may want to feel stability. Maybe if you're feeling anger, you want to feel heard, feel validated, and finding ways to recognize what those emotions are trying to tell you. You can Google, there's lots of charts out there about what emotions am I feeling? What are they trying to tell you? There's lots of resources on the internet that do talk about that to help you kind of recognize, especially when you're in the throes and you're helping anyone that you're caring for, they're in the throes of that trauma. Recognizing what emotions may be very, very difficult. They may not be able to, or you may not be able to recognize what the feeling is or label what the feeling is. That's okay. But you may be able to go, you know what, I feel hot. I feel hot. Hot is an energy. So that's, you're going to feel more of the anger, embarrassment, things that have energy to it. Whereas if you're feeling more cold, you may feel more on the depressed, anxious kind of side. So, or where do you feel in the body? That's how you can start to distinguish those feelings if you can't label them at first. And I can tell you, labeling them is a very challenging thing. I would ask people what are you feeling? That was work in and of itself. So not to be harsh on yourself, or that if you can't recognize what you're feeling, you're part of a big, huge crowd of people that also can't identify what they're feeling. And even at times I'm like, what is it I'm feeling? I don't know. I have to really stop and really think, because I'm going that I haven't stopped to check in. But the more that you check in, and you can also do that alarm on your phone, not only to breathe, but what are you feeling? To have that moment to start training. And you could be like, I don't know. That's okay. That's an answer too.
You explained that so well. Thank you.
So yes, I want to talk about coping, but also the need to get help. The ABCs of addressing vicarious trauma and burnout is awareness, and that's what I was talking about, of your own needs, your own limits, your own emotions, and your own resources. It's tuning inward instead of constantly tuning outward to the people that you're caring for and everyone that's around you. And and if we experience trauma, it's usually the impact of someone taking something. Right? It's that taking, right? And again, focusing off of what your needs are. Balance, ABCs, awareness, having balance. And I don't mean equal balance, right? And at different points and different times, if we were to draw a pie, like a big circle with different squares, or different squares, a circle with different triangles, different pie pieces, there'd be a piece that's for myself. I'm a mom. I teach at the university. I like to paint. I like to, I'm a daughter. I'm all the different things that make up who I am, right? A big, huge piece of my pie is being a mom right now and taking care of their needs. And it's disproportionate. My focus on me is small, but it's not that it needs to be half. It's proportionate to what's going on. It just needs to be on that pie. It needs to be on that circle. That's the piece that I'm hoping we can move towards, and something that you can take away from today is that you just need to be on that check-in chart. You don't have to be the big part. You don't have to be half. It doesn't have to be balanced. You just need to be on the table of something that you consider and moving forward. And connection. Those are three important pieces: being aware of yourself, finding balance and balance meaning your needs are in there somewhere being taken care of. The more balance, obviously, the better you're going to feel. However, let's be realistic here. It's not going to be equal balance. And feeling connected to oneself, to others, to something larger, whatever that may be. Someone mentioned to me before, it's like, who's on your dream team? Who is on your team? Meaning, who do you have in your circle that can help support you and give you different things, right? Like, some people will be there and have similar experience. They maybe you're all foster parents, and maybe you're all get together, and which is wonderful. But that's one aspect. What other things can you find? Other people you can find that help support you in different ways, right? Maybe you have a virtual book club. Maybe, because I know going to places or whatever is very difficult. Or maybe just, spending, people that like music, and you find an online club, or you have a chat. Like, I could say things in person, but I know that you guys are busy, and that's not always feasible. And that's a lot of energy to get out, to go out. It's a lot of energy. If you can do it, great on you. But if it's not, that's okay too. There's lots of virtual things. There's chats. There's things you can watch TV. You can watch different videos, go on chats talking about different things. That's all connection, right? How are they filling your bucket? How are they filling that aspect of yourself, that connection, feeling connected to something else? People that care need care too. Again, self-awareness is the ability to recognize our feelings, attitudes, and behaviors. See, I get ahead of myself. I've already gone through this, but again, I'll say it again because it's important. It requires us to pay attention to what's going on inside. So being able to stop and pause. You don't have to take an hour. You don't have to take a half hour. You can take 5 minutes, and you have 5 minutes. I have people, and they'll make comments and going, well, I don't have time for doing that. I'm like, how many times are you scrolling through Facebook? Are you scrolling? Are you looking at this random stuff, which is fine. But you can take those 5 minutes and do self-care. That can be self-care. But it's taking that often those are numbing things or distracting things, which do have a place in things that we do, but so does checking in with ourselves. And it needs to change. What we do when we're 20 and what we do when we're 40 and what we do when we're 50 and 60 and 70, it's going to change based on what your needs, where you're at, what's going on in your life. So those things will change. So it's not a catch-all, this is my self-care. It's, I need to constantly check in and see what I need. The best coping plans: respect your personality, preferences, reactions. Like, I know there was a big, whenever I was in school, I was learning about, self-care, and we talk about all that, and it's like, oh, go take a bath. I'm like, that is the worst thing that could ever happen. I don't want to sit in a bathtub. It causes me stress to think about sitting in a bathtub. I hate it. I'm like, that's not going to be on my self-care plan. Not going to happen. So it's recognizing who you are, your personality, and that it's okay. Like, I am a doer. I cope by doing things, and I like to do things. It can get out of hand where you're not checking in, but I'm a doer. That's just who I am. And people can go, well, you're distracting, you're keeping yourself busy, you're not coping with it. No, I'm doing, but I'm giving myself space to do the check-in as well. It's just my personality, and recognizing and that being okay. I know that I've heard comments. I had a friend, a colleague, who had lost her partner, and she went straight back to work. And I heard people saying, well, that's there, she's not dealing with it, she's going back to work. It's just who she is. She is dealing with it, but this is part of her journey, right? And recognizing what someone else is doing, that's the comparison, not helpful, right? How one person copes is not going to be how you cope, because it's not who you are.
Carrie
Sometimes
says she's a doer too.
Pardon?
I said Carrie says that she's a doer too. She relates to what you're saying.
Yeah. And there needs to be a balance of our coping. There needs to be something where we do escape, getting away physically, mentally, walking away, right? Sometimes when my son is going off, it is his trauma, it is the trigger, it is the anxiety, but it's coming off his anger. Sometimes I need to walk away. I need to escape that. I support them, he's safe, but I recognize, I'm like, you're having big feelings right now, big guy. I'm going to let you be with those feelings, because that's also teaching him that he can handle those feelings, that it's okay. I know in the moment where I'm like, I'm not going to respond well, because I'm exhausted and I can't tolerate it. So I need to be able to take a step back, breathe, and go back to the situation. And that's okay. Rest. You need to do balance, doing something where you can rest, and activities that have no goal and no timeline, because that just adds another layer of expectation that for some people that might be very helpful for them to have these goals and timelines, and that's how they function. Know your personality, know your preference, and then play. Fun, creative, positive energy. Dance, sing. I dance and sing in my car. 80s music, I love it. That's me. I'm dancing in the car. I don't care. I'm singing. My kids have told me multiple times to stop singing because I can't sing, but I don't care. Finding your fun in whatever way, in one moment. If it's in the car, because you have to drive, you have to do it. So you might as well have fun with it and finding those moments. Daily rituals that only take a moment can be helpful. Waking up and saying something that you're thankful for about yourself, I will add. You can start with things that you're thankful for and gratitude for others, but I also encourage you to saying one thing at the end of the day, one thing in the morning, something that you're thankful for yourself, something that you've done well, that you're proud of. Building and reaching out to social supports that understand the strain you're under, and support is really important too. Coaching and praising self, being gentle, being as kind as you would be for anyone else. be those, my cats are going nuts, I tell you. They're doing circles. Sorry. Being accepting, positive reframing, being gentle as you would for anyone else, to use that same tone with yourself, because we are our harshest critics. We are just mean to ourselves. There's no other way to put it. It's not helpful. It's not useful. Doesn't do anything. It's not a motivator. It just makes us feel worse. And it's not the truth. No matter what mistakes, and we all make mistakes. There are times that I'm short with my kids. Yep. Are there times I say things where I'm just like, that wasn't helpful? Yep. Are there times that I have to go back and go, Mommy was really grumpy, I'm sorry? Yep. Because we're human. And that also teaches the people, our kids, what is normal. They are also human. Strategies for refueling. Psychologically, journal writing, if that's your thing, that's your thing. If not, I'm a big fan. Someone told me about this. I call them toilet letters. They're letters that I write. Sometimes they're angry letters. They're angry. What I get my feeling out to one person, and I write, about a situation or a person, write it up, tear it up, throw it in the toilet and flush it. That's why I call them toilet letters. Make sure you're not probably on a well, because that might back up your well, or burn it. Sometimes getting those emotions out, having that freedom to say whatever you want, ripping it up so no one else has to look at it, can be helpful. Sharing your feelings if you're feeling confident or comfortable in doing that, and finding someone that you find is safe. Venting emotions in a safe way, throwing ice cubes, playing sad music, yelling into a pillow, throwing pillows, whatever the case may be, finding ways to getting those emotions out. Emotions have energy. All emotions have energy. So if we don't express our emotions, or we don't allow ourselves to look at our emotions, they will come out in another way. So because emotions are energy, they will come out. And they may come out in pain, in feeling achiness. It may feel, I work with people with eating disorders, so they came out in eating disorders for people by not dealing with the emotions. So they come out, they will always come out. So emotions are really important to start recognizing within ourselves. Sometimes visualizing a safe and nurturing place and visiting it regularly can be helpful. For me, for myself, cope, I'm really into, I'm into Reiki, and I'm into meditation and things like that. Things that require very little effort. Like, I lay there and people do Reiki to me, right? It's extremely, I find it very beneficial, but it also does not require extra energy that I may not have at that time. So finding those things that work for you. Massage, ask for comfort touch, non-should exercises. Don't do anything that's like, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. That shouldn't be on your self-care. I know I just said should, but it shouldn't be on your self-care. Creating a space in your home that's yours, where you can, whether maybe it's a picture on a wall, or maybe it's somewhere where you sit, or somewhere where there's a space that's sacred to yourself, that is just yours. Practicing radical self-care, meaning, hey, you can take care of yourself, just putting yourself first for once, and creating simple pleasures, things that bring you enjoyment, whatever that may be. Socially make time for enjoyable activities, getting out and trying new things, asking a friend to listen. Can you listen to me for 15 minutes? Outlining what you want. I don't want you to give me advice right now. I just want you to hear me. So asking for what you need, which can be a challenge too for all us carers and empathetic people out there. Gather with kindred spirits, or people that have similar experiences. and gather with people that don't have similar experiences, because they can provide you different supports. But connecting with others is really important in whatever way possible, in person, virtually, through people you will never meet that's on a chat somewhere, whatever the case may be. Connect in some way or another, and having a support group. Other things that can help: realistic expectations for self or others. That's a big one. We don't always have to fix. We don't have to fix. Sometimes we just need to be. Perfection does not exist, and the feeling to need to be perfect will always make you feel like a failure, because it does not exist. Balance, looking at what is working with what is not. So that's that self-reflection. Okay, what's going for me? What's not going for me? Again, when it gets too much, ask for help. Reaching out, finding a counselor, finding someone that you can talk, someone you can talk to, right? Is recognizing there's stress that's happening. You may be re-experiencing traumatic events, or there might be avoiding and numbing that happening. And then there's a persistent arousal, so that is sleep disturbances, problem concentrating. It gets to that point. But having those supports in place early is really important, right? And going in and checking in with somebody, it doesn't have to be weekly. It can be once a month or early on. It could be whatever. And just talking, focusing just on you and talking about whatever you want to do can be very freeing. And it's teaching yourself also that you are worth paying attention to. You are worth your experience. And it's okay. Your experience is your experience, and that's what's important. So created this image just because I look at coping and our cliff, and I look at it in this image of a cliff, right? So we can think that we're doing okay, we're doing okay, we're doing okay, we're doing okay, doing okay. But what actually is happening is that you're walking down a cliff. And we don't know where the end of that cliff is. That's the hard part. So we don't know where that is. But one day it will drop if we don't do the self-care early on. That I will guarantee. If we don't start doing the self-care, if we don't start paying attention to ourselves, one day something big will happen. The edge of the cliff will come and you won't see it coming. Because all along, I'm coping, I'm doing, I can do this, I just keep going, I just got to keep going. You're not even recognizing that you're headed down.
I love this visual.
So
it
that's
really
sorry.
shows no, it just really shows what you're talking about, and it's what we are constantly advocating for with our participants, is that have your date night, when you're placed with a foster placement or an adoption placement, continue those relationships that you have outside of that. You keep your, marriage happy, keep your friends, happy with you. All of that is about the balance of life, and you want to keep those support systems going, right?
Yes.
We do have a comment. It's in regards to re-experiencing is awful, but seems to happen a lot. I have 2 kids. One had a lot of challenges and bad experiences at school. Something as simple as picking up a child at school can trigger a re-experiencing. Any tips to dealing with it in the moment?
Yeah, so that's grounding, right? So that's a normal thing to experience, especially if we're heightened, right? That's triggers happen to all of us. But when it's heightened, and it can happen out of the blue, it seems, and it's connected. There's always a reason for it, but we may not be able to see that in the moment. And that's okay. You don't have to put the dots together. As grounding, deep breaths. I always talk about the 5 senses. So 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you smell. Chewing on something mindfully, like if you have gum, really paying attention to chewing the gum. So it's anything that can bring you to the present moment. Because what happens with a trigger is that it's pulling you to somewhere else, right? It's bringing you to another time. It's bringing you to a memory. It's bringing you to an emotional experience, a body experience that you've experienced previously. It's taking you out of the moment. So the best thing is to be able to bring yourself in the moment, right? There are things that you have to drop off your child, right? And pick them up at school. So there are things that you have to do, but are there different ways to do it? Are there different times to do it? Are there, can you create different ways to do the drop off that would be helpful? If not, is being able to ground in the moment. And using your senses is really important. Having something in your pocket that you can hold on that helps ground you to recognize that you are in the present moment. And that's what you have to do in the moment.
I just want to touch base here for a minute. I'll say what that person just said. Those are great ideas. I teach the kids those strategies. We as parents need to remember to use them too.
Yes.
I don't know how far along we are in our slides, but I want to make sure that I tell everyone we appreciate your time. We're getting on almost 5 to 10. So,
oh, goodness.
Yeah. So we hope that you can stick with us until we finish the slides and see if you have any questions at the end. Do you know how far along you are, Jenny?
Well, that's a great question. No, I'm closer to the end.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll try and get through a few slides in the next few minutes, and then hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes for questions and answers.
Yeah, for sure. So let me move forward. Again, getting help when you need it. So these are things already touched on. Ask for help when you need it, not when it's too late. Ask for help then too, but ask for help when you need it. Whenever you need help, it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to handle anything. You would never expect that for anyone else. So why expect that for yourself? I just wanted to touch on the kids experience burnout too. And they're especially susceptible to secondary trauma because their limited ability to understand, right? They don't have that type of thinking. We as adults cannot think, like make sense of what people go through. And so children especially cannot make sense of it. A window of tolerance. I'm trying to look at that, so I'm going to show you the window of tolerance. That in the middle, we have where we are feeling safe. We feel at our best or happy or present. When we're feeling the fight or flight response, that's when we're feeling anger and anxious and panic and irritated and frustrated and crying. In that section, what we need to do with either ourselves or with the people, our kids that we're working with, or our people that are in our care, is that be able to diffuse that situation. Because we can't function. These are just, it's my sense of humor, but I'm just like, when my kids are in that slate, I'm like, I can't negotiate with terrorists. Does not happen, cannot negotiate with them. We need to reduce that anxiety. We need to reduce those anger, because we're not going to process, or we're not going to be able to think about things. We're not going to be able to move forward until we diffuse it. So thinking of activities that you can do there. Same thing on the other end, that freeze, the shutdown. There's a threat, or feeling very anxious or detached, numb, shame, depressed. We need to activate in that situation, because we can't function either, because we can't think it, we can't process. We need to activate those emotions to get into that middle zone, is where we actually process things. So that's a lot of information in a very short slide, but I know I'm recognizing of the time. Because I want to just highlight how children may react that looks like vicarious trauma or burnout. For young kids in preschooling, so they may feel uncertain, they may have a generalized fear. They're not going to be able to identify their feelings very well, or what's bothering them very well, and make those connections. Those are a higher functioning cognitive functioning that they're not capable of. They might have more sleep disturbances, more separation anxiety. They may have regression in some of their developmental skills. They may be avoiding, other children may avoid one of the children that have come into your home because it's triggering to them. They're feeling that emotions. They may have more traumatic play, so they're paying attention to kind of their play, if they're being more aggressive with their play that's not typical of kids that age. Those are what you might start recognizing. School age children, there may be worry about themselves, the safety of others. They may be really preoccupied with what they're doing, what those other children are doing, what the parents doing. They may be really preoccupied with where everybody is in the family. They may have feelings of guilt and shame. They may be saying what's going on over and over and over again because they're trying to process it. That's what's happening. They may be overwhelmed by their feelings because they're hard to feel and something they're just starting. Again, sleep disturbances, trouble concentrating, more headaches, stomach aches, not feeling well, maybe more aggressive behaviors. Adolescents, maybe more self-conscious, maybe more self-conscious than a typical adolescent, about their emotional response. They may feel more fear or vulnerable, may fear being labeled as abnormal or different from their peers, and may withdraw more. Feelings of shame and guilt, may have ideas of revenge or retribution, maybe engaging in more self-destructive behaviors or more accident-prone behaviors. Again, may have headaches or stomach aches. They may be experiencing that. So what can you do? Your presence is your superpower. You don't have to fix. It's just your presence. Being there is your superpower. It helps them feel safe and helps them feel seen, soothed, and secure. Just being there, listening, helping children, especially label their feelings, is important because it's like, oh, you're having a lot of anxiety right now. I'm wondering if you're worrying about this. Helping them make those connections by labeling will not only help yourself with those feelings, but will help that children to make sense of it. They don't have that. That's an advanced cognitive skill that they don't have. So you're helping them label and making those connections between those feelings. If you make a mistake, we all make mistakes, or react in a way that's not helpful, it's okay. We all have oops moments. Being honest and going, you know what, mommy or daddy or whoever made a mistake. It's okay. Remembering that we're human. That's something that we tend as carers and people that care for other people forget that we are actually human. Check-in, again, there's a check-in for kids. There's lots of different available. This is one I found on the web to help them as a checklist. Feeling happy, so if they can't feel like red hot, like it gives you a visual to help them understand. So what anger might look like. I can't handle it, kicking, upset, whining, demanding. So it helps you kind of what it looks like, what it feels, and things that you can do. Emotion check-in list, kids, zones of regulation. Those are all terms. Those are all different charts that are out there for kids. And you can have it posted. I have one posted about emotions in my home. It's there. They can see it. It's just a reminder. And it's the zones of regulation are, I think it's red, yellow, and green. And it's like very quick. Like and I've heard my kids going, I'm in a yellow right now. I'm in a red right now. I'm like, and I know what that means, right? And it helps them know what that means. And things that you can do is just being there. Again, I've said that encouraging them to express their feelings, making those connections is really important. Normalize the feeling that of course you feel that way, which is the same things that you can say to yourself. Of course you're feeling overwhelmed. Of course you're feeling angry. Of course you're feeling sad. Feeling validated is such an important piece of that we don't always get at different parts in our life, but validation is such a huge thing in normalizing our experience. Same thing with adolescents, helping them understand the feelings, because there's the normal angst of adolescence and the emotions that go along with it, and then add trauma onto it. You got all kinds of mixed up feelings. Some things are quite typical and normal. Step one, compassion to yourself, deep breaths. setting an alarm on your phone to remind yourself what you're feeling at different points, and to breathe are really important. If you could hit a big reset button, what is one thing that you would do differently? That's just reflecting on the moment. That's not in a non-judgmental way, right? We can go, I could have done this, but there's that air of judgment that we want to remove. And this is the last side, be kind, rewind. And I found that it makes me laugh, but it's like, and pretty soon I'm going to put that up in teaching and no one's going to have any clue where it comes from, which will be very sad. But it's being kind to yourself, pausing, and kind of going back and talking kindly to yourself. Remember that you are a wild child. You were born a wild child to be pure love and knowing what you want. So anything that's not that, it's not yours.
Well, I think we're going to open it up to questions. If anyone has any and they'd like to write in the chat, or if they have any feedback about the webinar tonight, I would like to take a moment and say, a huge thank you for this. I myself could relate to everything you were talking about tonight, even the fact about the 80s music and, doing that. I was like, that's me. Like, Cyndi Lauper, girls just want to have fun, right? Being silly, giving yourself permission to be okay in times that you're not, and leaning on your support systems. It's just, there's so many times that I just sat and listened to your words tonight that I wouldn't use the word heavy. I would use impactful and relatable. So I truly want to say thank you. It was amazing for me. And if anybody has any questions that they are thinking about later and don't want to write tonight, we know that our time is limited tonight. It is up. We can give the next 5 minutes for sure. So please don't feel shy. Jenny, you're good. Like if it takes 5 more minutes,
The
right?
kids are asleep. I'm great.
And we didn't get interrupted. It's an excellent night. See the small wins, right? Take those small wins.
That's right.
But definitely, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and also remind them to go to our website at www.nbadoption.ca. Look up all those resources, register for webinars and support groups. I explained at the beginning when the support groups were and the dates, but you'll find them all on our website. I truly appreciate everything you did for us tonight, Jenny. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone for coming. And Diane says, wow, thank you so much. Gives me lots to think about. And Amanda says, thank you so much. So we definitely know that you've, as they say, hit the nail on the head. Like you really hit what we wanted tonight and covered the topics that we wanted. And you gave such great advice on how to overcome that and watch for our signs of vicarious trauma and burnout. Carrie says, thank you for putting into perspective.
And thank you. It was beneficial to me hearing, saying it. I need to hear it too, right?
Yes,
we need to keep hearing it. Because sometimes things are like, we're on a good path, and then it's like, oh, life happens, and it's like, okay, it's not starting over from square one. It's okay, this is where I'm at. Regroup, rewind. All right, and move forward.
And Angela says, thank you for this refresher. I really need to hear this today. So I'd like to say goodnight then to everybody. And I look forward to seeing you at our support groups. Please email us with any questions. I can forward them to Jenny. And have a great week, guys. Thank you. Thank you.